Aurora Restaurant sparkled under the city lights in the heart of Atlanta. It was the kind of place people dreamed of visiting, with glass walls that reflected the glow of chandeliers inside. Famous people, business leaders, and the wealthy, all, came here to see and be seen. Every chair, every tablecloth, every dish was carefully chosen to create an atmosphere of luxury. But behind the glamour, not everyone felt welcome. Roman Reigns pushed open the tall glass doors one warm evening. He wore a pair of jeans and a simple black shirt under his worn leather jacket. His boots, though sturdy, had seen better days. Roman was a large man, broad-shouldered and strong, with long, dark hair tied back loosely. Despite his humble clothing, his presence filled the space. He moved quietly, scanning the restaurant, looking for a seat. Inside, waitresses in tailored uniforms moved between tables carrying trays of wine glasses. Conversations hummed as laughter rang out from the fancier tables. One waitress, Emily, stood near the front desk. Emily was tall, with shiny blonde hair pulled into a bun and sharp, judging eyes. She had worked at Aurora for years and saw herself as the gatekeeper to its exclusive world. When Roman approached the host stand, Emily noticed him right away. She gave him a quick, dismissive glance, taking in his plain clothes and scuffed boots. She didn't like what she saw. "Good evening," Roman said politely, his deep voice calm but strong. Emily raised her eyebrows and crossed her arms. "Good evening," she said back, her tone stiff and cold. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Roman didn't flinch. "Yes," he said simply. "I'd like a table." Emily blinked, surprised by his steady response. She leaned against the desk, forcing a tight smile. "We don't get many walk-ins. Most of our guests make reservations weeks in advance." She let the words hang, as if daring him to leave. "That's fine," Roman replied. "I'll take whatever you have available." Emily let out a small, fake laugh. "If you say so," she muttered under her breath. She turned and grabbed a menu. "Follow me," she said, not bothering to look back as she led him into the restaurant. The journey to his seat felt like a walk of shame. Emily didn't choose a table near the windows, where the glow of the chandeliers made the room feel warm and welcoming. She didn't seat him near the live jazz band or among the diners enjoying their fancy cocktails. Instead, she led him to the back corner of the restaurant, far from the glamour. The table was near the kitchen door, where the clatter of plates and the shouts of chefs could be heard. The lighting was dim, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning supplies. "This should do," Emily said, as she tossed the menu onto the table. She gave him a tight-lipped smile. "It's quiet and private. Back here, I think you'll feel comfortable." Roman looked at her and nodded, his expression calm. "Thank you." Emily stared at him for a moment, confused by his politeness. She expected him to look uncomfortable or embarrassed, but he didn't. He sat down and opened the menu as if nothing was wrong. Frustrated, she spun on her heel and walked away. From a nearby table, a well-dressed couple whispered to each other. The woman, wearing a sparkling necklace, tilted her head toward Roman. "Do you think he knows where he is?" she asked her husband. The man smirked. "Maybe he got lost," he replied. Meanwhile, Emily returned to the front of the restaurant, where she laughed loudly with her co-workers. "Did you see that guy?" she said, pointing toward Roman's table. "He doesn't belong here. I bet he'll leave as soon as he sees the prices." Her co-worker, a young waiter named Sam, frowned. "He's not bothering anyone. Maybe he just wants to eat?" Emily rolled her eyes. "People like him don't come here just to eat," she said. "They come to feel important, but they always leave embarrassed." Back at his table, Roman calmly studied the menu. He wasn't in a rush. The noise from the kitchen didn't bother him, nor did the occasional curious glances from other diners. The live music played softly in the background, blending with the hum of conversation. Roman took a deep breath, enjoying the atmosphere despite the less-than-warm welcome. A few minutes later, Emily returned to take his order. She stood with her notepad in hand, her expression dripping with fake politeness. "Have you decided?" she asked, her tone sharp and impatient. Roman pointed to one of the menu's featured dishes, the Aurora Imperial Steak. It was the most expensive item listed, priced at $450. "I'll have this," Roman said. Emily's eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed. "The steak?" she asked. "Just to confirm, you do know how much it costs, right?" "Yes," Roman replied. "It sounds wonderful." Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. Most people would hesitate or backtrack at this point, but Roman stayed calm. She jotted down the order with exaggerated motions, then looked at him with a smirk. "You must really like steak," she said. "Just so you know, we expect a minimum tip of 20%. Keep that in mind." Roman met her gaze and nodded. "Thank you." Frustrated, Emily walked away, muttering under her breath. "We'll see how long that lasts," she said, as she passed a nearby table. The couple who had been watching earlier exchanged another glance. "She's being awful," the woman whispered. "Why is she treating him like that?" "Because she thinks she's better than him," the man replied, shaking his head. "It's disgusting." Roman waited patiently as the evening unfolded. Emily, determined to make him uncomfortable, delayed his order. She stopped at other tables to chat with wealthy-looking guests, laughing at their jokes and bringing them extra drinks. She even delivered an appetizer to a table that wasn't hers, just to avoid walking past Roman's corner. Still, Roman didn't complain. He leaned back in his chair, his hands resting calmly on the table. A few diners nearby began to notice his quiet confidence. Some were impressed by his composure, while others whispered to each other, wondering who he might be. At one point, an elderly man sitting near the center of the room raised his glass toward Roman. His white hair was neatly combed, and he wore a dark suit that looked expensive but understated. Roman nodded back, offering a small smile. "He has the patience of a saint," the old man said softly to his wife. Anyone else would have walked out by now. When the food finally arrived, Emily carried the plate to Roman's table with an exaggerated air of importance. She set it down with a loud clatter, causing a few people to turn and look. "Here you go," she said, her tone sweet but insincere. "Enjoy." Roman looked at the steak, which was perfectly plated, and then back at Emily. "Thank you," he said. Emily leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Are you sure you'll like it?" she asked, her tone mocking. "It's a pretty fancy dish." Roman smiled slightly. "I'm sure it will be excellent." Emily stared at him, frustrated that her attempts to rattle him had failed again. She walked away, muttering under her breath, "Let's see if he's still smiling when he gets the bill." Across the restaurant, diners continued to watch the scene unfold. Some shook their heads at Emily's behavior, while others seemed curious about Roman's calm demeanor. "Who do you think he is?" one man whispered to his wife. "I don't know," she replied. "But he's handling this with more grace than I would." Roman, still seated in the quiet corner, picked up his fork and knife. He took his first bite of the steak and smiled. Whatever challenges the evening brought, he seemed more than ready to face them. Roman, still seated in the quiet corner, picked up his fork and knife. He took his first bite of the steak and smiled. The rich flavors melted in his mouth, the seasoning perfectly balanced, the meat cooked to perfection. For a moment, he let himself enjoy it. Despite the chaos around him, the judgmental stares, Emily's sharp tone, he focused on the simple pleasure of a well-made meal. But across the room, Emily wasn't done with her little game. She leaned against the bar, her arms crossed as she whispered to Sam, her younger co-worker. "He's probably pretending to enjoy it," she said with a smug grin. "I mean, look at him. Do you think he even knows what filet mignon is?" Sam shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward Roman. "I don't know, Emily. He seems polite. Maybe we should just leave him alone." "Leave him alone?" Emily hissed, narrowing her eyes. "People like him think they can just walk in here and act like they belong. It's embarrassing for everyone." "Maybe it's embarrassing for you," Sam muttered under his breath, but Emily didn't hear him. Meanwhile, Roman continued to eat, his calm demeanor never wavering. The clatter of plates from the kitchen, the hum of conversation, and the soft piano notes filling the restaurant seemed to fade into the background. As he reached for his water, an elderly man approached his table. The man, dressed in a sharp navy suit with a gold pocket square, leaned on his cane as he stopped next to Roman. His kind eyes sparkled as he smiled. "Good evening," the man said, his voice low and warm. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Roman looked up and returned the smile. "Not at all. Please, have a seat if you'd like." The older man chuckled. No, I just wanted to say, I admire your patience. Not everyone would handle this evening as gracefully as you have." Roman tilted his head, his smile softening. "It's just dinner," he said, his tone calm. The man raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps. But kindness is rare these days, especially in the face of disrespect." He glanced toward Emily, who was too busy chatting with another table to notice their conversation. Before Roman could respond, Emily swooped in, her expression sharp. "Is there something I can help you with, sir?" she asked, addressing the older man with forced politeness. The man's smile didn't waver, but his tone grew firm. "No, young lady. I was just appreciating this gentleman's company." Emily's lips tightened, but she forced a smile. "Well, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." The older man turned back to Roman. "Enjoy your meal, son," he said. Then, with a small nod, he returned to his table, leaving Emily fuming. By now, the room had shifted. More diners were noticing the tension, their quiet conversations sprinkled with whispers about Emily's behavior and Roman's calm response. The couple seated near the center of the room leaned toward each other. "She's awful," the woman whispered, shaking her head. "Look at him. He hasn't done a thing wrong." "Maybe we should call the manager," the man replied. "This is getting ridiculous." At the bar, Emily wasn't ready to let go. Determined to make Roman uncomfortable, she approached his table again after he finished his steak. With exaggerated politeness, she set down a dessert menu in front of him. "Would you like to try one of our signature desserts?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Or would you rather skip it?" Roman looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "The chocolate soufflé sounds good," he said. "Thank you." Emily smirked as she wrote it down. "Excellent choice," she said. "But it takes about 20 minutes to prepare. I hope you don't mind the wait." "I don't," Roman replied simply. As Emily walked away, she glanced at Sam and whispered, "Let's see if he stays that long." The restaurant manager, James, stood at the edge of the dining room, observing the interactions from afar. James was a tall, middle-aged man with a sharp suit and a calm demeanor. He prided himself on maintaining Aurora's reputation for excellence. But tonight, something was off. The energy in the room felt tense, and the staff seemed distracted. James noticed Emily moving quickly between tables, her expression smug. His eyes followed her line of sight to Roman, who sat in the back corner, calm and composed. Frowning, James decided to step in. He approached Emily near the kitchen, his voice low but firm. "Emily, a word?" Emily turned, startled. "Yes, Mr. James?" "What's going on with that guest in the corner?" he asked, nodding toward Roman. "I've noticed tension." Emily hesitated. "Oh, him? He doesn't belong here." "Sir," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "I was just trying to manage the situation." James's brow furrowed. "Manage it? Emily, it's your job to make every guest feel welcome, not judged." "I'm sorry," Emily said quickly, though her tone lacked sincerity. "I just thought—" James cut her off. "You thought wrong. Excuse me." Without waiting for her response, James made his way toward Roman's table. "Good evening, sir," James said, stopping at Roman's table. "I hope you're enjoying your meal." Roman looked up, his calm smile still in place. "Good evening. Everything's been great, thank you." James hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice. "I'm James, the manager here. I wanted to personally apologize if anything tonight hasn't met your expectations." Roman set down his water glass and met James's gaze. "Thank you, James," he said, "but there's no need to apologize. I've enjoyed my time here." James nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. "If there's anything we can do to improve your experience, please don't hesitate to let me know." As James turned to leave, another guest, a well-dressed woman seated 2 tables away, called out, "Mr. James, I think you should know. Your staff has been treating that gentleman poorly all evening." The room fell silent. Emily, who had been hovering near the bar, froze. All eyes turned toward Roman. James turned back, his face pale. "Is that true?" he asked Roman. Roman looked around the room, taking in the curious and concerned faces. Finally, he nodded. "It is," he said, his voice steady. "But I don't hold grudges. I believe every moment is a chance to do better." James's face hardened. "Thank you for your honesty, sir. Please know that this behavior is unacceptable and will be addressed immediately." The diners murmured among themselves, their whispers filling the air. Emily turned bright red, her smug confidence shattered. She tried to disappear into the background, but the weight of her actions followed her. The restaurant remained eerily quiet as James, the manager, stood by Roman's table. The murmurs from the diners swirled around like an invisible current, carrying a mix of curiosity and shame. Emily, still lingering at the bar, avoided everyone's gaze, her shoulders slumped under the weight of her own actions. James took a deep breath and turned toward the diners who had spoken up. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," he said, his tone firm. "Aurora prides itself on being a place of respect and hospitality. What has happened tonight does not reflect our values." He turned back to Roman. "Sir, please accept my deepest apologies. Your meal tonight is on the house. It's the least we can do to make up for what you've experienced." Roman looked up at James, his expression calm but serious. "Thank you, but there's no need for that. I didn't come here for special treatment." James hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Roman stood up, his tall frame towering over the table, and looked around the restaurant. Every eye was on him now, the air heavy with expectation. "Everyone here saw what happened tonight," Roman began, his deep voice carrying across the room. "And I want to say this: how we treat people says more about us than it does about them." The room fell completely silent, each word landing like a stone dropped into still water. Respect isn't something we reserve for people who look a certain way, or dress a certain way, or spend a certain amount of money. Roman continued, it's something we should give freely, because everyone deserves to feel valued. Emily shrank further into the corner, tears welling in her eyes. She had never felt so exposed, so small. Roman's gaze softened as it landed on her. Mistakes happen, he said gently, but what matters is what we do next. We can choose to learn. We can choose to be better. Emily hesitated, then stepped forward, her voice shaking. I'm so sorry, she said, her hands trembling as she clasped them in front of her. I didn't realize how wrong I was until now. I was focused on the wrong things. Roman nodded, his tone kind but firm. Apology accepted. Now it's up to you to prove it, not just to me, but to every person who walks through those doors. Emily nodded quickly, wiping her tears. I will. I promise. Roman turned back to the rest of the room. This isn't just about one person or one night. It's about all of us. In a world where it's so easy to judge, let's choose kindness. Instead, let's create spaces where everyone feels welcome, no matter what. A few patrons began to clap, their applause growing steadily until the entire room was filled with it. Roman nodded in acknowledgement, his smile returning as he sat back down. James stepped forward again, his voice steady but humble. Mr. Anoari, on behalf of the entire staff, thank you. Tonight, you reminded us of something we should never forget. Aurora will do better. Roman finished the last sip of his water, stood, and adjusted his jacket. As he made his way toward the exit, diners whispered among themselves. Who is he? One woman asked. I don't know, her companion replied, but he's someone worth listening to. As Roman reached the door, James followed closely, behind. Please, sir, James said, his voice filled with respect. Come back anytime, and thank you for your grace tonight. Roman gave him a small nod. Take care of your staff and your guests, he said. That's all I ask. With that, Roman stepped out into the warm Atlanta night. The lights of the city sparkled around him as he walked down the sidewalk, his figure calm and steady against the bustle of the streets. What happened that evening at Aurora was more than just a dinner. It was a reminder of the power of kindness and patience. Roman's calm response to judgment and cruelty changed the atmosphere of the entire restaurant, leaving everyone with something to think about. In the end, Roman taught a lesson that went beyond fancy meals or exclusive places. It was about treating people with dignity, no matter who they are or what they look like. If you enjoyed this story and believe in the power of kindness, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel.